Okay, welcome everyone to our town hall meeting. This is Dr. Nashin live from Travis Dupree's room at Lincoln Hall. You might be wondering, why in the world am I wearing a mask? Well, you'll see around me, there's a few people in the room. So this is Christina. If you have questions, you're going to be chatting to Christina. There she is. And so I want to be safe because I'll be walking around the room and I don't want to do that without a mask on. So here we go. So welcome to the town hall meeting. So first thing I want to talk about is, thank you. Tonight's presentation that we put together for you is based on over 200 questions that the parents have submitted. So first of all, thank you for taking the time to submit those. And there will be time at the end to submit some more. After the presentation, well, throughout the presentation, there's an outline of our district reopening plan. We will go step by step to give you a sense of what it will look like to reopen schools. We're going to wrap up the presentation with a summary, and then we're going to have a chance to ask questions. We are also going to host another town hall meeting, so please write down your questions, or at 2 in the morning when you think of one, go ahead and write it down and get ready for our next town hall meeting. So let's begin with our overview. First of all, our overview is under the umbrella of working together. We have to do this together on behalf of the children. We must be compassionate and understanding. Our goal in the district level is to provide families with a really healthy choice that's good for your family. Every family out there has different needs, different students, different things that's in front of you. So we want to give you a solid choice so you can make a choice for your family. From the administration and the board, you have my promise that we are going to give you straight up information, the information that we know we have right now, and that could change. Even after I'm done talking, it could change. So we're trying to give you transparent information. And honestly, if we don't know the answer, I'm humble enough to say, I don't know, but I promise to get back to you. So please keep working with us. So the guidance that I mentioned is from the governor's office, the Illinois State Board of Education, the Illinois Department of Health, and we're following all that guidance. And we know what's best practice for teaching. And so we're trying to combine the guidance with what we know is best for students. We will be honest and we will be fair, and we're going to resume school with protocols that everyone feels safe about. We need to figure out, how do we get children back to learning and keep them safe and keep the staff safe? So that's what we're going to be working through. We know we have to change some habits. We love to hug the children and say hello. We might not be able to do that. We're going to have to get used to wearing masks. We're not used to doing that. So some habits will change. The Back to School Committee is really driving and helping us with all this guidance. And that consists of 33 people from all the different buildings. And we break up and work on what's best for Todd Hall, what's best for Rutledge Hall, what's best for Lincoln Hall. And our guiding principles are safety, social, emotional, and mental well-being of students and staff. And also we're tailoring the guidance for you and for your family. And so it's really hard to just come up with one size fits all. We want to give you choices. Part of the Back to School Committee landed on the surveys for staff and for parents. We said we need more information. What's everybody thinking? So thank you for filling out the surveys. Thank you for providing the questions. The Back to School Committee also said we need to have some town hall meetings and get some information. So here we are. Our next Back to School Committee is next week. So let me go through the guidance very quickly. We're going to go through this presentation probably rapidly. If you were here this morning, you probably saw some of this, but we are going to go through it briefly. This will be posted on our website because we want to get to your questions and answers. So the overview of the guidance has these few bullet points that you see on your screen. They said, get children back in school. We want to see them in person learning, but it's going to look a little different. Make sure there's face coverings, unless you could be 6 feet apart outside. 50 people or less in one space. That's our classrooms, cafeterias, gyms. Social distance as much as humanly possible. So as I'm walking around this classroom, you can see the desks are facing one way, and we spread them out as much as we could. There will be symptom screening before buses, and before you walk in the building, we will be taking your temperature with a touchless thermometer to make sure everybody's safe. We're going to increase cleaning, and of course, throughout this whole endeavor, we are preparing for the possibility to go back remote learning. So we're trying to make it as fluid as possible for families, so that if something happens, you could go remote learning and still be in the classroom when you want to log in during certain times. And then when you're ready to come in person, you come in the classroom and you don't miss a beat. We're trying to hit that mark for families. Some people are saying, why in-person learning? Well, we really want to give you a choice right now. The guidance is telling us students need to be back in school, and we agree. Some of the questions that came up were, why are other districts doing it so different? Well, even our own 219, our high school, is doing it a little different. And when we're working with the superintendents, they just have different resources, different facilities. They have way more children in their spaces than we do. So every district is trying to do what's best for their local community. And we're looking at the local data, and Lincolnwood is doing great. So we want children back in learning. And the guidance also says that we want to focus on children that are under the age of 13. So like I said, we want to give in-person and remote options. There will be attendance daily. The grading's going to go back to normal. Children are going to be responsible for the work. So we want to give parents the option. There's going to be set times throughout the day to log into live instruction, and the teacher will be teaching, and the camera will be following within the classroom. We still need strong partnerships from families if you're going to choose remote learning. We talked a little bit about symptom screening, and we're going to be doing temperature checks, screening at the vehicles. Students will go right into the building, and they'll go right to their first period or homeroom classes. We talked about PPE and face coverings. There will be gloves for the teachers needed for cleaning. And we're also looking for different alternatives for special service students with face shields. There was a whole bunch of questions about face masks that came through those 200 questions. How are the children going to be wearing the face masks? Who's going to teach them the right way? Well, we're all in this together. So we're going to make sure we spend time teaching the children how to wear them, why to wear them, and we're going to provide one mask from the district and one mask from the state for each children and staff. And of course, if you have your own, and we'll have some disposable ones in case a strap breaks. There, of course, will be expectations and accountability for students because we want everybody to be safe. And there's also, if there's a physician's note for any conditions that would prevent proper usage of face masks. There was a whole bunch of questions also about personal hygiene, about washing hands, hand sanitizers. How are we going to spend the time? Who's going to teach this? Well, we're going to do that together. If you look over here, we're going to have all kinds of visual cues to help everybody learn how to wash their hands and get ready to be safe. There was another group of questions that parents were asking that talked about transportation. How are we going to do the bus transportation? In the survey, we asked parents, would you be willing to drive your child? And many of the families said yes. So as soon as we get that information, we're going to make sure the buses are safe, socially distanced. Children will have to wear masks. The bus will be sanitized in between, and we will be taking temperatures before the children get on the bus. Oh boy, there were so many questions about lunch and recess. That is going to be a tricky one, but what we're doing right now is children will eat in their classrooms. We will have designated area for allergy awareness, and children could either bring their lunch from home, or we will be providing, you could purchase bistro boxes from the lunch program. We will be wiping down desks before and after. We will be washing our hands before and after. And then of course at recess, less than 50 in each playground area, and we will have to wipe down and sanitize the playground equipment in between. There was some questions about water bottles. How are we want to make sure the children stay hydrated. Absolutely. We need to make sure that's happening. We want the children to bring their own water bottles if they can, but we will provide water bottles also. And we're working on our water fountains because there is a water fountain and a bottle filler station. We would like to leave the bottle filler station open, but shut down the water fountains. More details are still being worked out with buildings and grounds. There was another group of questions. Thank you for your understanding about social distancing. How will children know? We're going to have to teach the children about what the 6 feet look like when you're apart, and how do you approach your friend, and how do you make sure that you're saying hi. When you're saying hi to somebody, we have to think of different ways to greet people besides running and hugging them or shaking hands or getting too close. We have to stay 6 feet apart. And of course, we're going to be teaching that to the children as well. There will be visual cues all over the place, and the desks will be facing forward. The adults also have to stay socially distanced apart. So there'll be no gathering together. Our PTA meetings, thanks to the PTA, are going to go virtual. And that's how they finished in the spring, and it worked out very well. Your safety and all those around you are the priority for everyone. Classrooms are going to look a little different, as we talked about in here. We're going to spread the desks out a little further. We're going to make sure they are facing forward, making sure they're cleaned in between as much as possible, of course, every night as well. You won't see as much furniture in the classrooms, especially the primary buildings. They'll have a little less furniture so we can have more distance in between. For example, here's a few pictures just to give you a visual. This is a Rutledge Hall classroom that we staged just so we can see what it looks like. The other group of questions that I know is on every parent mind, and I know I would be wondering the same thing, all those school supplies. Boy, through the years of education, we taught children how to share and how to collaborate and how to work together. And now we have to say no sharing. It's back to the old-fashioned pencil boxes or pencil cases, and everyone will have their own supplies. If there is any sharing of manipulative, we're going to have to wipe those down in between. So we're going to be sending more notification to families. If you've already bought your school supplies, you only have to bring a couple of each item in at the beginning of the year, and we'll let you know those things. We have to make sure every night we are cleaning, and in between the days, and of course, bathroom cleanings. We have to have a schedule of when was the last time that bathroom was cleaned. We've already started using that hospital grade disinfectant, and then we're working with our buildings and grounds team to make sure our HVAC units have special filters that have those antimicrobial coatings on them. So we're doing everything we can, working with all of our teams to make sure we're keeping everyone safe. A lot of people are asking about schedules. Well, what's the schedule? What's the schedule? Well, right now we want to get children back in school. Once you're here, it's going to look a little different inside, but we want to get them back on time, just like we used to. Now, the middle school schedule is still being worked on. You're still going to have the same start and end times, but within the day, it might look a little different to shrink the transition times in the building so that children are not in the hallways as much as they used to be. We're still working on some of those schedules, and we'll get more information to you, but just so you have a general idea that it'll be the same start and end times. We're going to have to build in time, as I just talked about. When are we going to teach all the kids about hand washing and time to actually do the hand washing so many times throughout the day? So there will be time making sure we have time to do that. The entrance and dismissal procedures will look a little different too. As I said, temperature checks, and then you go to your first period class. That's how we're going to get children in. If you're going to be in the driving circle, you just stay in your car. We'll take the temperature check of your child, and they'll go to their first period class. Once we get used to that, we're going to just keep doing that. On the buses, we're going to have some help on the buses so that we can take temperature checks before children even get on the bus to come to school. And then they would go right to their first period class so there's no gathering. And also exiting, we're going to have a slow exit to make sure students are on the buses socially distancing on their way out. Oh, another group of questions about bathrooms and hallways. Trust me, we're thinking about that too. We want to make sure everyone has time to go to the bathroom in a safe way, 6 feet apart, only a few at a time, the hallways as well. The teachers are going to work on different schedules to make sure only a few students are in the bathroom, and then cleaning every couple hours in between there as well, and teaching the children about proper hand washing as soon as they're done in the washroom. There was a lot of questions about, are we still going to have specials, and are we still going to have art and music? Of course, that's like such a big part of what children love to come to school for. It just might look a little bit different. We might have some of the specials teachers going into the classroom instead of the children transitioning, especially at Todd Hall and Rutledge Hall. At the middle school, it's going to be part of the schedule, but there will be no changing for gym in the locker rooms. And there will be less transitions because it might be divided into days. Students will definitely transition because the overarching is every child needs to get what they need. So they will transition to special education, EL services, our English learners, and our gifted and talented. Band, orchestra, and chorus, according to the guidelines, you can go ahead and do band. It's just we have to make sure there's less than 50 people, so there won't be any big giant performances and until further notice. If you're wearing a covering for orchestra, that's fine. For band, you'll have to take it off for certain instruments. Hand washing, of course, before and after rehearsal, and no equipment sharing. For singing, they'll all have to face one direction. There will be no circles or no choreography. So things will look different, but we are trying our best to make sure that we are providing a great education for students. Some of the questions out of the 200 said, what about extracurricular activities? Right now, the Little Nine Conference is not going to do fall sports season. It's being canceled for the fall. And our enrichment clubs and intramurals will not start immediately. We're going to wait and make sure students are safe within the building and get used to all those protocols first. So one of the things that we talked about at the Back to School Committee is we still have 4 or 5 weeks left of summer. We need to try to help get the children ready even before they come to us. So we're working on some videos about building mask stamina. You know, have your child wear a mask for 20 minutes and the next day maybe for 30 and so on, and try to build that stamina. Also talking about if you're going to do a remote option, really making sure you're carving out a nice space for your child to work from home. We want to teach them about personal space and hygiene, and of course, some of that hand washing. So we're going to create some videos so you can show your child so they have a little sense of what it's going to look like when they come back to our buildings. The unique needs of every child has always been a concern for any educator. We want to make sure that we address your child's needs, and we are working through that in every way we can, from special education to speech and language, to our English learners, our gifted and talented. All those accommodations will be addressed. It just may look a little different, and we're working through the details. Okay, there was a lot of questions about, all right, Dr. Nash, and what are you doing if people get sick? What's gonna happen? Well, we're hoping that doesn't happen, but if it does, we do have protocols that we are going to follow. Every building will have a quarantine room so that if anyone well, first of all, if anyone has any symptoms, please stay home. Don't come to school if you're sick. That should be a guidance that we use all the time anyway. We're gonna have separate quarantine rooms in every space. We're gonna make sure if somebody was sick in this room and they went to the quarantine room, we would make sure the students were in a safe place in another spot. We would clean and disinfect, and the students could come back in that space. If somebody is diagnosed with COVID-19, well, then we would notify whoever was in close contact with that person. And close contact is defined by 15 minutes or more within 6 feet, which is why the social distancing is so important. The use of remote technology, as we're talking about now, is also going to help us. If somebody does go home sick, and if they're not too sick, they'll be able to still log into their classroom and not miss a beat, which is why we're working so hard to have these choices for families so that it could be fluid, so that you don't miss anything if someone in your house needs more time. So the next steps, students begin on Tuesday the 25th. We can't wait to see them. Pre-K and kindergarten is going to have some orientation, whether virtual or a few at a time, and then they will start later in that week, which is a typical start time. Now our teaching staff is going to be here much earlier because they have to learn some of the new technology. They have to learn about the swivel camera, which you might wonder, what am I holding? Well, this is called a marker. This marker picks up my voice and it picks up movement. So when I move, the camera moves with me in a swivel format. So if I was a teacher in this classroom and you were remoting in at home, you could follow the teacher and remote in and not miss a beat in that classroom. So we need more training on that. The teachers will come in early the week before the 25th, on the 19th, 20, 21, and 24. And teachers, I could tell you, are working on some of this stuff already. So in summary, thank you for participating in our town hall meeting. Truly, I'm so glad you joined us, and all the questions that came pouring in were so thoughtful. And I know if you are chatting right now with Christina, there may be some questions that we're going to answer at the end. We gave you an outline of our district plan so far. There's many details still to work out, and we are working through every single one of them. But I do want you to know that this could all change at a drop of a hat, and I wish I had more control of that, but I just don't. We care about your children so much. We are going to make sure safety's at the forefront, but we want children back learning. And at this time, we're going to ask some time for some questions. Let's see. Here we go. All right, Christina's going to read them off for us. This is like stump the professor. Let's see how bad I'll get on these questions.
Hi, everyone. So the first question that I've received is, I completely understand the guidance from the CDC, but what about the families who are not following the guidance outside of school? I've been noticing children in Prosel Park without masks and not following social distancing. Current data shows 18 to 29-year-olds are highly impacted now, and these people may have siblings who may or may not attend our schools. What is the guidance around this impact?
Whoa, Christina, that's a long question. Okay, let me see if I summarize it correctly. The question started with, I understand the CDC guidelines, but what about the people that aren't following the guidelines that are out there? And now we're going to put them all together in a school system. Oh, I wish I had a really good answer. Here's what I'm going to say about that. Even before COVID-19, we can't control anything that's outside of our buildings. Everybody's different. What we can control is what's in our building, and we're going to keep everybody safe here. So I don't have a great answer for you, but the more we educate people about the guidelines while they're in school, the more people will understand. I don't know, we'll do the best we can here in school. So I hope I answered that one. If not, go ahead and send us an email and we'll put a Q&A together. Okay, Christina, give me another one.
What kind of interaction are you allowing for the children? As you know, children want to have fun and want to play. If we are teaching kids hygiene, when do teachers actually teach?
Oh, that's another good one. So when are we teaching if we're teaching all the hygiene, and how are we stopping children from coming too close to one another? Is that it?
Yes.
You know, that's going to be a hard one. Children are, they love each other and they just want to go and hug their friends. They want to hug their teacher's legs and everything else. And we're going to just have to teach. Children love to tell stories too, and they interrupt each other in classrooms, and the teachers have to teach. So that's what we're going to do. And when are teachers going to teach the curriculum? As soon as children start learning these protocols, the sooner we can get to the teaching. So number one is safety, all the protocols. Number two is the social emotional, and then we're going to get to our curriculum. Absolutely, we will.
For students who ride the bus, will the buses be as crowded as they have been in the past?
Oh, that's a good question. No, we don't want crowded buses like we had in the past. We must keep them socially distanced. The guideline does say 50. We want to go less than that. So we're still working through that. There's a meeting with the bus company in the next few days. So we're working with that group as well.
Will the children at Todd Hall on the CCDC side be subject to the same restrictions? Can students face masks and other?
That's a great, so everyone knows that we're partners with CCDC and we love having them as part of our campus. And actually, they have been up and running, I want to say for 8-10 weeks now. We have been learning from them. They take temperature checks every single morning. No parents are in the building. The children go in the building on their own. The teachers are wearing face masks, and I have been working with the director, Susan Fahey, and checking in, and they are doing great. Their enrollment keeps going up, and students are safe, and teachers are safe.
Can students be remote on certain days and in person on other days, or do we have to choose one or the other?
Okay, so the question was, can you be remote one day and in person another day, or we have to choose? We're really working through the details. We want it to be absolutely fluid, but we wanted to work with you and your families, what's best for you and what's best for the teachers, to make sure that you have choices all throughout the year. So nothing is locked in. We just have to keep working together. There will be more details of that coming forward.
If we choose remote learning, how can we get laptops or iPads for the home?
If we choose remote learning, what about technology? And that started happening in the spring, and we still have our tech help desk that you can just email that tech helpline, and we will help you with technology, whatever you may need.
How will library be done in homerooms when the books are in the library?
So library in the homerooms, if the librarian's coming in the homerooms, I'm gonna leave that to the creative professionals. They could bring some on a cart, they could come in for story time. They're gonna work through their protocols. And then when books are returned, there needs to be like a 72-hour quarantine for that book before they get back into circulation.
I would like to know if student mental health is being considered. From what we know about this virus, it is very likely that there is a spread in a school. There is a good likelihood of a teacher becoming critically ill or even passing away. Is the school considering grief counseling options?
Oh, that's a heavy one. Let me take the first one. So are we considering social emotional learning? That was our second step in our guiding principles of our back to school committee. Safety, social emotional, and teaching and learning. Social emotional is a big component of what the teachers are working on right now. Lessons to address all of the things that students have gone through in the spring and teaching them through this pandemic. And yes, we have all kinds of professionals to help us through any terrible time. Hopefully that won't happen at all, but we are prepared. That was a heavy question.
How can we justify having band and chorus when this is an airborne virus?
How can we justify band and chorus when it's airborne virus? That's another great question. And again, I am not a scientist. I am following the guidance that is written in the document, and they talked about band as long as you're socially distanced and as long as you're not sharing instruments and washing before and after. They're saying band is okay. For chorus, children love to sing. We don't want to stop them from singing. We just want to show them that there's a safe way to sing. And so we want to make sure our social distancing could be in place and still sing.
Will there be any type of orientation for students starting at Lincoln Hall this year, the sixth graders?
You know what, that's a great question. And orientation for pre-K and kindergarten and third grade and also sixth grade, all those transitions, we're working through possible virtual orientation or possible half-day orientation, of course, with all the protocols. We're working through those details. We did not forget about those transitions. Thank you for bringing that question up.
Are there any healthcare professionals on the back to school committee taking part in the decision-making process?
I'm sorry, can you repeat the question?
Are there any healthcare professionals on the back to school committee taking part in the decision-making process?
Healthcare professionals on the back to school committee. Right, one of the slides that I had was talking about having some subcommittees, and that's one of those subcommittees. We want to make sure the nurses are involved in all of our safety protocols. First, we wanted to get a vision of our back to school plan, which we have a great overview, and now we'll have some subcommittees that will help us with those details.
Will there be additional temperature checks throughout the day? The concern is, what if a child had a fever, was given Tylenol, and then came to school so they are not exhibiting a fever in the morning?
additional temperature checks. Right now, the protocols are not completely finalized, so there may be a protocol that we do that in the middle of the day, but I also know the teachers are great about watching if little Johnny doesn't look quite right to send them to the nurse and get that checked. So, of course, be watching for that, and we would hope that someone doesn't give a child Tylenol and send them on their way. If they needed Tylenol, they probably should have stayed home to begin with.
Is the school prepared if there is an outbreak to transition to remote learning?
Is there a transition for remote learning if there's an outbreak? Thank you. You know what? Of course, yes. One of the bullet points from the guidance itself said the school should be preparing for remote transition, even if we just need 14 days to do some cleaning and then come back. So they told us to prepare, and this is one of the reasons we're giving choices so that we could be as fluid as we possibly can. So yes, we are preparing.
Kim, there's a comment attached to this question that says, hopefully to be more substantial than what we experienced at the end of this past year, including actual instruction. So I think now's a good time to talk about the advances we're going to hope to make.
Absolutely. Remote learning, what we experienced in the spring is completely different than what we're going to experience now. We have different technology that we're trying to use and implement, so you could literally be within the classroom with the in-person children. In the spring, we literally flipped the switch and we were remote learning. And you know what? And everyone did great. The parents did great. The teachers did great for that kind of change so quickly. And we did get better as the weeks went on, but we know that we have to move our curriculum forward. We know we have to help children grow, and we're coming up with all protocols to do that, including a formative assessment to see where students left off. And so we don't want to test children right away, but as soon as they get comfortable, we want to give them a little snapshot so it will inform our instruction moving forward.
How do we enroll for the remote option?
So that's a great question. How do we enroll? How are we going to do this? There will be another survey once our back to school plan is a little tighter. There will be another survey that really asks for a commitment for remote, a commitment for in-person, so we can make sure our class sizes are equal and spread out, and then a commitment for a bus versus driving, so we can work on our bus routes to make sure those are spread out as well. The first survey was just getting a sense of where our community felt, and that survey landed us in this kind of plan with 2 options.
Can we see the data from the survey? You mentioned screening, health, and vehicles. If we walk our kids to school, is there another screening area?
Yes, there will be another screening. If you're a walker, we're going to have little tents set up, like those little canopy tents, so you'll know exactly where to go to get your temperature check to enter the building. And what was the second part of that question? I'm sorry.
Is there going to be another screening area if they're walking their child to school?
Yes. Okay. So I answered it.
Yep.
Thank you.
Can we see the data from the survey with how parents voted and their preferences? You mentioned as much space as possible between desks. Will class sizes be shifted to make it 6 feet apart?
Okay, 2-part question. So will you be able to see the survey data? Yes, we're compiling that, and there will be a report that will be sent out, absolutely. Second question is, will the classes be 6 feet apart? The guidance talks about bringing children back, number 1. Second is, as far apart as possible. 6 feet is a great rule, but we want children back. So if that means 20 children are in a class, we spread them out as much as possible. If 19 children are in the class, we spread them out as much as possible. If 21 are in the class, we spread them out as much as possible. So that's why we're setting up classrooms with less furniture around, so that we could get more desks or tables so students sit on the edges of the tables.
Will supply lists be modified for remote students?
That's a good question. Will supply lists be modified for remote students? I honestly think if you're going to take the remote choice, you don't have to have a specific supply list. You just go according to what you need remotely. And if you are coming in person, you're only going to bring a few items from your supply list.
Kim, I've been notified that the screen sharing has some edits on it. If we can just stop screen sharing for the time being, and then I'll continue with the questions.
Sure. Thank you.
Thank you. Perfect. All right.
So now it's just Zoom.
Yes. Next
Thank you.
question
Go ahead.
is, you mentioned hand washing before and after lunch. Will classrooms have sinks added, like the portable ones, so that all kids aren't sharing the same sink? Sinks carry a lot of germs too.
That's a great question, and I don't have a yes or no to that, but that is it's something that we will put in our protocols to explore that if sinks will be added.
What is the protocol for physical education with regards to wearing masks?
So physical education, you could stay 6 feet apart, hopefully the weather holds up and our physical education teachers could take children outside, take the masks off, make sure you stay 6 feet apart. If you're indoors, if we can stay 6 feet apart, we can take the masks off during that activity. But I do know the teachers are also looking at activities that are not as strenuous if they have to wear the masks because they can't be 6 feet apart.
What happens if a teacher tests positive for COVID-19?
If a teacher or a family member of a child or a child tests positive, then we will follow the IDPH guidelines. We will have to call and report and follow those guidelines. Of course, that person would be quarantined for 14 days. And then people that were in close contact will be notified.
So the next question is, I think the response will elaborate on that a little further. Does the entire class then quarantine for 14 days afterwards? What's that protocol?
So the way the guidance is written, and again, I'm not a medical expert and this guidance is changing, but the way the guidance is written right now, if one child has COVID or if the teacher has COVID, it's not the entire class that has to be quarantined. It's only the people that were in close contact, which is defined by more than 15 minutes, closer than 6 feet apart. But again, that guidance is very fluid. We would, of course, report to the Cook County Department of Health, who would guide us in the next steps if somebody tests positive.
The quarantine room seems good in theory, but if you have multiple people in there, some may have COVID and some may not. That seems like a risky situation. Is there a one student per quarantine room philosophy?
Another great question that we will consider in our subcommittee for the medical experts. We are really hoping that, we have to keep people separated, of course, until someone could come and pick them up. We're hoping that pickup process is quick, but in the meantime, we would keep children separated.
When do we have to let the school know if we decide to do remote learning?
That survey will come out obviously before school starts, but I don't have a locked in date. When that survey comes out, there will be a deadline. And then it's just communication with us. If your family needs have changed or if something changes, please just communicate with your local school and we want to work together.
Will Lincoln Hall kids remain in the same classroom and teachers move, or will students change classrooms?
So right now, that's a great question. Are children going to move at Lincoln Hall or are the teachers going to come in? Right now, they're working out the details of the schedule and they are working on at least minimizing the transitions. So they would have half of their classes on one day and then the next day. So they're still working through that. If we do move, it's definitely less movement than a regular school day. That's what I could tell you right now.
What if a child has issues wearing a mask for the full duration of the school day?
We're going to work with every family and work through any issue. So if your child has concerns about wearing a mask, we're going to work together. You just please keep open lines of communication with us and we will work with you.
How will the contact tracing be done to be able to determine who came in contact with someone who tested positive?
So the question was about contact tracing and how will that be done? It's really, we're trying to keep children in, their own desk so that we would have class lists and seating charts so we would know who's close around that particular child.
Will the teachers or staff be tested by the district?
The teachers or staff tested with like a COVID test?
Right,
no, right now there is no testing protocols that are written in any of the guidance. That's a personal and doctor. We are not doctors. That's between you and your doctor.
For those parents driving the kids to school and not taking the bus, would there be staggered times? If not, how can you control the flow?
Will there be staggered times for driving children to school? That's a great thing that we're going to bring up to that subcommittee because that line will get pretty long if there's more drivers than bus riders. So I do understand the question very well, and we will absolutely consider that. because we'll be doing temperature checks as well.
What is the protocol if the teacher is out due to COVID-19?
If the teacher is out due to COVID-19, then we have staff members that are going to be buddying up and having partners if we can as much as possible. And we also have a great pool of subs who are willing and able to come in and help us out as well.
For 3-year-olds in the special program, how would you ensure safe distancing?
For 3-year-olds in the special programming, how do you ensure safe distancing? I wish we can control safe distancing with 3-year-olds anytime, but that is something that I will be working actually with the director of CCDC, because they've been pretty accurate and pretty successful doing that, and I want to know her secrets. She's been doing that much longer.
What about the kids whose parents are first-line responders and are exposed more? For example, myself as an emergency department healthcare provider. Any restrictions for those kids?
There are no different restrictions for your child versus any other child. Every situation is very different, and we're going to help every family that we can.
Will the school be hiring additional nurses due to COVID-19?
Will the school be hiring additional nurses? I have to tell you, in my career, I am so impressed with this district that we have 3 registered nurses on this small campus. So right now, I do not feel a need to hire more. I've been in districts where much larger and they had 2 for the whole district, and they had to get in cars to go around.
Are there any orientations planned for new students who are not a part of those transition grades from school to school? Our child will be entering grade 4 as a new student.
You know, that's a great question, and welcome to Lincolnwood. I'm so excited to meet you. Typically, each building has like a new family orientation outside of like new kindergartners and those transitions. So I'm sure we will be having a new family orientation, even if it's virtual, to meet everybody.
What if a child has asthma and has issues wearing a mask but keeps social distancing during the duration of in-school learning?
Again, that's going to be between the family and your doctor and us working together to come up with strategies.
Will there be less movement between classes for the children at Lincoln Hall?
Yes, there will be definitely less movement between classes. That I can tell you.
Will there be a vaccine requirement implemented at any point of the school year? Do parents have an option to opt in or out should they choose?
A vaccine for COVID-19. So
Correct.
when the vaccine comes out, is there a requirement? Yes. You know what, that again is going to be a parent decision between you and your doctor and your family. We are not in the medical field. We are here to educate your children in a very safe way.
Will fire drills and lockdowns still happen?
Fire drills and lockdowns will most certainly continue to happen. We're going to have to work through safety protocols during those drills. But yes, we want to make sure we don't lose sight of our safety protocols before this.
We have a question about the possibility of a later start. Is that something that may happen, or is it too soon to tell?
Later start in the calendar year or the time of day?
For the school year.
For the school year. Okay. Correct. Right now, our target start date is August 25th. Again, I want to reiterate that this could change. It is July 16th right now. We're trying to get out in front of this and be as transparent as possible and have people thinking of questions, because this is all new for all of us and we want to be able to work together. So there is right now it's the 25th. There's no talk about pushing that out yet. Right now we're sticking with the 25th.
You mentioned that a physician note can be provided for a child who cannot wear a mask properly. Who will make the final decision on whether masking is required within the building, regardless of a physician note or not? How will this be communicated to the school district?
So that, again, is the guidance right now, is telling us to have masks in the building, and there's, policy that will potentially be talked about at the board policy level about masks within the building. But ultimately, that scenario, Christina, that you just read sounds like a family and a doctor and the school working together to come up with a plan.
Are test results required in order to return to the classroom after being tested positive for COVID-19?
Again, there's nothing in the guidance on testing before coming back. So again, that is not something that guidance outlines. And again, that might be something that comes out later.
Have you considered reducing class sizes?
we talked about reducing class sizes, and one of the survey questions was talking about families choosing remote and not. And so right now, the percentage of parents that said they would go remote is reducing our class size. If people all choose to come in person, we are still okay. The guidelines say 50 or less and in one space. So we will still be okay with that guidance.
If a quarantine is required, will teaching need to stop, especially if people are really sick or the teacher is really sick for those 2 weeks? How does this work with attendance goals?
Can you repeat that one more time? It's a quarantine
Sure, if the quarantine is required, the question is asking if a teacher is out for 2
and
weeks.
and they're out for 14 days.
Yes.
Okay. Then we would, again, we would either have another teacher that's available to teach during that session for 2 weeks, or we have a substitute. We have a great pool of substitutes that can come in and help us through those 14 days.
Will data be released in terms of any outbreaks? Remote families would like this information if they were to reconsider an in-person format.
I believe we would be as transparent as we possibly can with any data that we have based on the HIPAA laws and everything else we're allowed to do.
I know MAP testing is really important to know if students are on target and meeting goals. Is there a platform that might allow students to do this remotely if we do end up remote?
So the question is about testing remotely, is that right? So we looked into that in the spring, and it's really difficult to do based on servers or some technology, but we are still working with them. And if not, we were already thinking about doing it's called a survey test, which is a shorter version to give us a sense of where students are to inform our instruction. So there may be something where we could have a rotation of the students that are remote learning just to come in and do that survey test at certain times in a safe way. We'll work through all of that with our families.
Kim, you might have answered this before, but will the class be notified if there is a COVID case?
I don't know. I don't know the solid answer for that one. My gut is telling me we would, but I don't want to give you false information. I believe we would be communicating if there was a positive COVID test case. I don't know.
When you do the temperature check and if a child has a fever, what is the next step? I assume the child was dropped off by a parent who is now no longer on campus.
Okay, well, first of all, let me back up. If the child will not get out of the car before taking temperature, but let's say the child was a walker and the child has a fever, they would immediately go in the quarantine room, and we would go through the protocols like we always do about reaching a parent or an emergency contact.
Will there be swivel cameras in all classrooms?
There will be swivel cameras in all classrooms, and I can assure you our professional educators are going to take this technology to the next level, way better than Dr. Nashin has. I'm still working on it, but I know the professional educators will knock your socks off with this technology.
What is the protocol for lunches that are being provided to the students?
Right now, we're working with our lunch department to create those bistro boxes and deliver them to the classroom. I don't know if that answered it, but.
We have someone who joined asking if a family can switch from in-person to remote, and the answer is yes to that one. We are a new family to Todd Hall. We are in kindergarten. We did not receive any surveys, and we did complete registration. Will we have an opportunity to still participate? I can answer this one, Kim. We began sending in all communication to all of our new families, starting with this town hall, and moving forward, the new incoming 2020-2021 families will receive all communication. The next question is, if the district is not requiring teachers to be tested after a suspected case, how can you notify families without this information?
Can you repeat that for me? Sorry.
If the district is not requiring teachers to be tested after a suspected case in the classroom, how can you notify families without this information?
We would never notify families if we didn't know that it was a positive COVID case. We have to remember, I know there's a pandemic. I'm not naive to think that we forgot about that, but there's also allergies and 24-hour fevers and strep throat and everything else. So we will provide information and disclose information without breaking HIPAA laws. We have to be very careful to protect everybody's right to privacy as well. But we will disclose as much as we can if there's a positive case.
Will cameras be on all day or for only whole group instruction?
That's a great question, and we're working through that with our professional educators because we want to give parents, if you are choosing remote learning at home, we want to give you your child's schedule, and we will give you the times to log in to all the different classes. Now, the teachers are professionally going to have to figure out how to kind of front load instead of having 45 minutes of sitting on a camera. The teachers will front load that group instruction and then maybe log off for independent work or possibly group work in a virtual way. So we still want to teach working together. We still want to teach collaboration, but we're going to have to do it in a safe virtual way. So there may be a time to kind of log off the camera and work in groups.
We have two questions asking about temperatures. So what temperature would prevent a student from attending in-person school learning, just so I know? And then the next one is tied to that. What is considered a fever? Is it 100.4? And if so, what if a student would come in at 100?
That's a great question. The guidelines say 100.4 would make a student go home. So we've been using our thermometer, the touchless thermometer. So I'm going to go ahead and take my temperature. Let's see if I have to go home. And mine is 98. So we would take our temperature, and we've been using this. It takes a second to take it. And if it's 100.4, that would require a send home to get more information. Again, fever isn't just, oh, now you have COVID. The fever means something else is going on in your body and you need to take care of yourself.
Kim, at this point, that was my last question.
Okay.
I know a few more are coming in, so maybe in the next 30 seconds or 1 minute, if parents have more, we'll
okay.
stick around.
So right now we've kind of answered all of the chat room questions. There's a few more populating according to Christina. I will stay here, and but if you need to log off, go ahead and log off. I so thank you for joining us, especially if you joined us this morning and you logged back on. I appreciate you coming twice. We want to answer all of your questions. There will be another town hall meeting coming soon because we want to be here for you. So it was so good to see everybody. I miss all of you. Please give your children a hug for me. Any other questions?
Yes, we did receive a couple more. Is there a release form that will need to be signed should my child be in class during a remote learning session?
A release form for, is there a release form if my child's in class during a remote learning session? I think the question is talking about privacy because of the camera, if I could summarize that question. And that was brought up, and of course we want to honor everyone's privacy. And if there's something that needs to be talked about or shared, you need to communicate with your building principal, because the camera only goes where this marker goes, and I could stop the camera at any time. If I need to walk behind the camera by pressing this button, the camera would freeze. So there are protocols that we could use if we need to attend to an emergency or something like that as well. So please just communicate.
Will my child have the same teacher if they are remote versus in person?
Yes, that is the whole fluidity. We want to have class list. You're in this teacher's classroom, you're in Dr. Nashon's classroom, and if you have to be remote because for 2 weeks quarantine, you could still come in Dr. Nashon's classroom, and then when you're feeling better, you come back to Dr. Nashon's classroom so you don't miss a beat. And if you're working in groups virtually, you can still be in your groups. So that was the whole strategy and decision about this. And so just like any new technology, we're working through it. We want to get training. The first couple of days might be a little clunky, just like we did when we went remote learning. And you just be patient with us, and we're going to get better and better and better with all of our protocols.
In pre-K, students don't have individual desks and work is often play-based in small groups. How do you anticipate this changing?
Pre-K is not in desks, there are tables. And so we have to, there's a couple tables in here as well. So we want to try to be 6 feet apart on the ends of tables. And again, we're going to work through those class lists and see how many children and see what we can do to design the classroom and see if there's any other furniture that we may need to swap out.
Will before and after school activities happen?
Before and after school activities right now in terms of extracurricular are not going to be happening, potentially moving into clubs as we move along. I know in the spring we did some virtual clubs that children enjoyed. We may implement those. And I'm not sure about any of the like Camp 74 or any of those before and after school. I'm not positive about that yet. Stay tuned for that answer.
Is there any type of release form that will need to be signed prior to attending in-school sessions?
Any release form?
So a form that would be provided just to return back to school
I
in
don't,
person.
if they were out sick and then come back, I'm not sure of the question. The question was about a release form before in-person learning. I'm not sure I have enough details for that question. If it's about if you were sick to come back, as long as you're fever-free for 72 hours without any medication, fever-reducing medications, you can come back. I don't know if I answered the question without the details.
There's another question for someone who joined later in. Is there an option for remote learning and in-person learning? The answer is yes to that. And there's another question asking if a recording of these town halls will be made available. The answer to that is yes as well. There's a question about pre-K. How will it be ensured that the little kids that are 3 and 4 will keep their masks on?
We're going to do the best we can. I can't guarantee anything about 3-year-olds wearing masks, but we are going to do the best we can, and the teachers will redirect and redirect and redirect. Even in education before pandemic, I wish I could make all the children behave, and we're going to just keep teaching and teaching and teaching. That's our jobs.
There's another question, Kim, that you've answered earlier. Will there be a temperature check for bus services? And the answer
Yes.
is yes to that one.
Yes.
When will we know classroom and teacher assignments?
As soon as we can, get the survey out first, and then we will organize the class teachers. That's a very good question. We would need the survey results to see the in-person strategies first, and then we would get those class sizes.
There are 2 questions surrounding advanced and GATE. What about advanced math? Will it still exist, and will children change classes for it, specific to advanced learning?
We are definitely working on our gifted and talented learners. As I said in the presentation, every child, we're working on getting their needs met, and that includes our gifted and talented. There may be at certain grade levels where we can differentiate for the advanced or the accelerated, but the GATE children will definitely go to their GATE teachers, and we're working through the protocols of the others. So not a solid answer yet, but we're definitely in conversations about that.
Can you expand on the group learning at Lincoln Hall? How will that work with the remote learners?
So the group learning, using Schoology and Google Classroom, they can collaborate on different projects electronically. So again, I'm going to leave that to the experts and the professional educators. They do such a great job, and they did such a great job in the spring, making sure everybody was still collaborating and working together. And I'm sure they're going to find very unique ways to do that.
Will teachers using Swivel be able to see and interact with remote learners? Will they be more observers than participants?
Yes, so this was challenging for Dr. Nashin to try to interact with 160 or 190 people. But as a teacher, if there's 25 of you, you will definitely have more interaction and be able to talk to the teacher. So there will be like a Zoom, it's just like Zoom, but with this camera kind of in the middle. So you will be able to communicate and ask questions to the teacher.
We have 2 questions surrounding after-school childcare and not extracurriculars and clubs. Will there be aftercare offerings if we can't get our children as early as dismissal?
That's a great question, and I don't have the answer yet. Whether Camp 74, I believe it's called, is our parks district in the school. I don't know that answer yet. That is something we're working on, and that will, as soon as we have the information, we'll get that out to you.
How will the district handle families who do not believe in wearing masks? Will it be mandatory for their child to wear masks?
Right now, the guidance is telling us that we should have masks in school. Again, I think we'd work with any family. We're going to need to sit down and have a conversation about that.
How would remote learners submit the products of physical assignments like artwork and poster board presentations?
That's a great question too. And I know the teachers' wheels are turning about how to turn in things that from remote learners. We talked about getting materials to the remote learners, and so there might be a reverse book pickup, like we had the book pickup at the end of the year to get materials out. But the teachers will be creative about assignments that they give, giving alternatives to the remote learners so that they can do an electronic assignment.
If a student has a family member test positive for COVID, what is the protocol for making sure the school is made aware?
You know, it's just like any other thing. We're relying on families to communicate with us. And if they do, we will follow protocols in place and watch that child for symptoms, just like we would any other child.
Will online attendance be good? Will online attendance be done daily, like in the spring?
We will come up with a different attendance. That's a great question. Attendance is going to look very similar like it did before we were at COVID, where teachers will be taking daily attendance. So parents will have to call in if your child is not going to attend school, whether it's remotely or in person. So there will be daily attendance just like before.
Sorry, Kim, I'm just reviewing the next set of questions that came in. Will the back to school bash be happening?
Right now, unfortunately, the back to school bash will not be happening. That was such a well-attended event. It is way more than 50 people. So right now, the guidance tells us 50 or less, so we will not be having that.
Will there be more information provided by the district on how a combination of remote and in-person learning will work out?
You know what, we're working on fine-tuning our plan, and there will be more information as more details come together. As I said, this town hall meeting and the surveys was part of gathering that information to tighten up our plan. We will now write this all up and present it and make sure families get a hold of it so they have more details.
What about pre-K students sitting on the floor all the time? Will the floors also be sanitized, and are the buses also sanitized daily?
The buses will definitely be sanitized a few times a day. And in terms of the floors, yes, we're going to have to sanitize the floors for students to be sitting on the floors. How are we doing?
Good, a few more. My son is entering 7th grade and has been in special education for math and ELA. She also gave him support with classes as well. My 4th grader is in reading intervention. So does that mean my kids have to go to school, or can they do remote learning still with support from special education?
They can definitely choose remote learning, and we're going to work with you to make sure your children get what they need. Absolutely.
Is there an option to opt out of physical education? How will remote physical education work out otherwise?
For remote physical education, that will be, the gym teachers will have swivel options, but there may be some on-demand choices as well. Again, details are still being finalized with that.
There's a question surrounding clarification, or asking for clarification on whether or not masks will be required or not by the school district.
Right now, I'm following the guidance of the document, and it says that masks are required indoors. So we will be working with our policy committee and our Board of Education to adopt policy to support that. So hang on to that answer for more details about where the policy will land with that. But I can tell you what the guidance says. The guidance says face coverings indoors.
Will a child be marked absent if they are sick and unable to attend remote learning?
They will be marked absent just for an accountability standpoint, so we know where children are, and that, you know, we will give parameters for turning in work if children are truly sick. We're going to just work with families.
Will there be a standard for what masks are acceptable?
Right now, it's a face covering, whether it's a face covering that you have from your house, or we will provide you with 2 options, one from the state and one from the district. So you will have 2 options for sure given to you. If you have something at home that you prefer, you could wear that as well.
The final 2 questions that I have right now, yes, are asking about hybrid learning again, and whether or not we can switch from in-person to remote, and the answer again is yes, parents are able to switch. And then one more just came in. Will the parents learn about positive COVID cases? We don't need to know who, but if there are positive cases, it would be great to know.
Yes, absolutely. There will be disclosure without breaking that HIPAA law. So yes, we would say something like there was one COVID positive case in this building or this classroom, and then we would let parents know without breaking that HIPAA law.
Are face shields an option during in-school learning?
Face shields are not a protective measure because of all the space underneath the face shield. Now we are looking at an option of a different face shield for teachers, for special education services and speech and language services that's clear. We ordered a couple samples to see. It has some protective lining under here, so we're working on that.
Will teachers be able to have parent volunteers that help?
Right now, we are not letting any parent volunteers in our classrooms. We are keeping our buildings with students and staff right now. We hope to open that up as the year unfolds, of course.
I ordered supplies online. How do my kids collect those so that they only bring a few items to school? And I think the answer to that is that when the items are delivered, the building principal can work with the family specifically.
Yes. That's a good one.
Okay. Will there be any types of field trips?
Right now, no field trips.
And how would remote learners take exams?
Remote learners taking exams, if it's the classroom exam, the teachers will find a way to make sure that's electronically pushed out there. The standardized exams that we talked about earlier, we're still working through details of the standardized testing. I'm more concerned about getting children back and making sure they're okay and getting them understanding the protocol so that we can get to the teaching. That's what I want to have happen.
6 feet still seems ideal. And then the question goes on to say, is there a class size that will be deemed too large? I know you want as much distance as possible, but at what point will another teacher need to be hired?
You know what, there's not a solid question or answer for that. Our class sizes are low in this district when everybody's in district, even without the pandemic. So we are going to be monitoring that very closely because every classroom is also designed very differently. Some are squares, some are rectangles, some are long. So we are trying to design each class to just see what is safe. And that's why some of these guidelines are very, very fluid right now.
What will be the hours for remote learning? Will it be a shorter day for those students?
So the guidance talks about 5 clock hours of school, and that includes live instruction, it includes group work, it includes independent work. So our target for our remote learners and our in-person learners, of course, is that 5 hours. But also, when you think about children will be here more than 5 hours because of lunch and because of all the other protocols we need to teach. So our regular school day is a little bit longer, but the target, if you're remote learning at home, is that 5 clock hours.
How will art classes work? Will the kids have to get their own art supplies?
That's a great question, and I don't have an exact answer for that because I know our art teachers do such an amazing job and we have so many materials, but the art teachers at the pre-K-5 level will be coming into the classroom. So we're gonna have to figure out how to either sanitize in between or the children purchase their own, or they're gonna be thinking of their curriculum in a different way.
Will the school year extend if it has to close due to an outbreak?
No, right now the guidance gives a little bit more flexibility than it normally does because of the pandemic. We were granted 5 extra remote learning planning days, so we don't have to use those emergency days at the end. So our calendar is our calendar, and that will be finalized in the next couple of weeks also.
If a kid has a fever, not necessarily COVID, how long before they can come back? Would a fever require a COVID test?
You know what, our typical guideline was 72 hours fever-free without fever-reducing medication. That's kind of the guideline, and that's the protocol we would use.
I'm reviewing the next set of questions. You mentioned that students will sit in the same seat each day. What about grades at Rutledge and Lincoln that switch for different periods?
Again, the teachers will have a seating chart for each class and each movement so that we will know where children are in case that there is a case. We would know a little bit of contact tracing from those seating charts.
There's a question asking if a child has a cold, will they be required to stay home?
If you have a cold, no. And, it's allergy season too. So, children are sneezing and coughing and, itchy eyes. We deal with that all the time. The fever is probably the biggest symptom that we'll definitely send children home. If you have a sniffy, we want you to stay home if you're sick, but of course you can't keep children home for every little thing. So we're going to have to rely on people's judgment for that.
Will all outside groups not be allowed in the school? Is it correct to say that no assemblies will take place?
No, definitely no assemblies because that's 50 or more. And the outside groups, I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but any outside special groups like chess visits, for example, will not take place.
If the governor announces remote learning at any point, will the teachers still use the swivel and schedules?
That's a great question. If the governor says we're going to go remote learning, or if there's an outbreak, will the teacher still use the swivels? We're going to need to cross that bridge, so to speak, but the teachers will probably have permission to come into the building and teach within their classroom, because some of the teachers, even in the spring, they said that might have been easier to come into their classroom rather than in their homes.
We saw an example classroom in the presentation. Will we have the opportunity to see the classroom set up for the room that our child will be in?
We actually haven't thought about that. I will definitely keep that in our list of questions to knock down with our back to school committee.
Will homework be eliminated so items aren't brought back and forth?
Homework will look different because we really want children to concentrate on just being well and getting the work done within school. So it will look different, but I don't think we're going to eliminate it completely, no.
Is there any additional help should a student have any issues learning remotely?
There's always going to be that tech help desk immediately. So if you're trying to log in and you have a problem, you're going to email that tech help desk, and the tech department will reach out to you to try to get you logged in right away, because the teacher is going to be busy doing this. So if there's remote issues, they will email that tech helpline. And again, those first couple weeks or first couple days, we're all going to have to help each other out.
Okay, Kim, I'm going to go through the next 5 questions, and I'll share with this group what I shared with the group in the morning. Whatever questions that are remaining that I have received and will receive through the end of this session, we will be exporting everything that I have received in the chat and developing a Q&A PDF, question and answer document for our parents, and we will be sending that along with a recording of the session.
Great, great.
The next, I'll go through the next 4 to 5 questions. What happens if the state goes back to phase 3? Does this current plan only work in phase 4?
That's a great question, and that just made me so sad. This only works in phase 4 because of the 50 or more. If it goes back to phase 3, it's 10 was the guidelines before. And so we would probably go remote, which is exactly why we're trying to be as thoughtful as we can with the technology, so that we can be fluid with immediately going remote or immediately coming back, or one child going remote and back and forth. So we're trying to make it as seamless and calm and safe as possible.
Remote pre-K seems difficult. Is there an option to get reimbursed if we choose not to attend now?
You know what, just call the office. Absolutely, we want to work with every family. If it doesn't work for your family, absolutely call the business office and we'll work something out.
I'm going through the final ones. Hang on one second.
Moving around.
I believe the answer to this is yes, since it already happens, but I'll still share it with the group. Could there be an online homework?
Online homework?
Online homework.
Homework,
Yes.
yes, there could
Okay.
be online homework like Google Classroom or Schoology or Seesaw, where it's submitted online, absolutely.
And then the final question that I have here is if the school has considered going on a shorter schedule or ending school earlier in the year, for example, May instead of June.
You know what, I know the Back to School Committee is considering all kinds of different models. And as I said, today's overview was just that. It was an overview of what we're thinking. Some of the details of the schedule or the days or the times are not quite refined yet, but we wanted to give parents kind of this high level overview. We want to bring children back. We want to give parents options. And so I could tell by the thoughtful questions, parents' wheels are turning. How does this work for your family? Does it work for your family? And that's what we wanted with our town hall meetings, is to reach out to you so you could ask us thoughtful questions and we could get you better answers. So thank you for being with us. And thank you for providing the questions to make us and push our thinking. We can't possibly have all the answers, but we are going to work very hard to keep your children safe and to keep learning and to keep working together as Lincolnwood SD 74 strong. Thank you. Have a good night, everyone. Thank you again. Who logs out of the meeting? Oh, I.